you guys know this country. So before we get started, as you guys already know that I'm starting a Patreon page. So if you're interested in subscribing my Patreon, I very appreciate that if you can comment down below, tell me what kind of content you would like to see in my Patreon. Without further ado, let's just get started. So this book is about the history of this country, but it's written in a very interesting way, so I was going to read it by myself, but I thought might as well make it ASMR for those of you who are interested in history or just need some whisper to fall asleep, fall asleep, fall asleep, fall asleep, fall asleep. And today's video is going to be a tipsy reading because yeah, I'm just kind of doing like a self-care day. I took a bath and I put tea leaf in my bath, so it's like a tea bath, and I use black tea, so it's like helping my metabolism to get better and just kind of help the circulation. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, it smells great, you know. I'm like soaking myself into a huge hot tub of tea. It's the first time ever I try it because, like, I think it was yesterday. I was just doing a tea bath, and I thought I would do some reading after shower, but I was as well inviting you guys to join me for today's little reading, and hopefully we all learn something, or we just, you know, relax and fall asleep. That's fine too. That's wonderful. And I'm just going to drink a little bit here and there, but also whisper for you about the history of Haiti. Okay. Okay. So this is the book. This is a book. 𝙧𝙬𝙧 by 𝗨𝗟𝗟𝗪 𝗨𝗪𝗟𝗪, I guess, 𝗨𝗪𝗟𝗪. And let me read the back. I already read like 4 pages, but I thought, you know, it's not a lot, so you guys can just keep. I was just gonna continue with the paragraph that I was going, but giving you a brief how do I say this, like kind of like an introduction about this book in the back. So it says, in this full narrative history of the Caribbean nation, historian 𝗨𝗟𝗟𝗪 offers insight into Haiti's complex and layered past, showing that its current state as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere was not inevitable. This is highly readable and accessible. History takes the reader through Haiti's turbulent past, from its start as a prosperous colony and the only country to pull off a successful slave revolution, to its struggles with political despotism and poverty, as international efforts pour in after the horrific earthquake of 2010. 𝗪𝗟𝗪 provides the necessary context for envisioning its future, including a detailed account of the quake's consequences, the benefits and cost of an American intervention, and a telling look at what Haiti must do to rebuild. 𝗨𝗪𝗟𝗪 is an associate professor of Caribbean history at McNeese State University of Louisiana, a native was not long, unfortunately, before Hades' old demon came back to haunt it. But Robinson claims, notwithstanding, these demons were not deities, the voodoo spirits of the dead, but age-old rivalries that had long bedeviled the country and that resurfaced in the aftermath of the January 12th earthquake. First on the scene was the prickly nationalism that is one of Haiti's enduring quality, but with which frequently complicated its relation with its neighbor. Incoming U.S. troops were careful to introduce themselves as savior, bringing much needed help, not as conquerors walking in the footsteps of earlier generation of U.S. invaders. Race-conscious Haitian could also not help but notice that their commanders-in-chief, like virtually all Haitians, was of African descent. And yet the sight of Black Hawk helicopter circling over the presidential palace and Marine patrolling the streets of the capital brought back painful memory of past U.S. occupations. It was not long before grumbling began about some questionable U.S. policies, such as the allocation of landing slots at the airport, which U.S. troops take over, repaired and ran, or the high rates of amputations at the hands of contingents of Texan doctors. Well aware that many of his compatriots were, quote, stigmatizing the presence of the U.S. Army, end of the quote. Haitian Prime Minister Jean-Max 𝗨𝗟𝗡𝗅 reassured them that the foreign forces were well-intentioned and provided essential service that the country could hardly do without. But his words were largely lost in the Haitian public, and rumors soon spread that the U.S. relief efforts somehow fit into the elaborate imperialistic plots to take over the country. The United States had secretly developed a weapon to spark earthquake as well, so as to justify a military takeover under the guise of humanitarian efforts, according to the left-leaning Haiti Progress. In one of the most outlandish but also most widespread clans, even the more conservative Haiti Observateur, the organ of affluence. Haiti American community in New York underlined the quote, risk inherent in any intervention of this kind, end of the quote, and urged Haitians to remain, quote, vigilance, because U.S. President Barack Obama was under pressure from Republicans to continue his country's imperial policy. Further north, a Haitian resident in Montreal similarly complains in a letter to 𝗨𝗟𝗡𝗙, it's probably in French, but okay, that Haiti had been, quote, invaded by NGOs, end of the quote, intent on enriching themselves while undermining the authority of the Haitian states. No incident better encapsulated the tension between Haiti's desperate need for international aid and its distrust of foreign well-wisher than the arrest of 10 U.S. Baptist missionaries 2 weeks after the earthquake on charges of they were trying to sneak 33 kidnapped Haitian children out of the country. If true, the charge prisoners languished in pre-trial detention because they had yet to be formally charged with a crime even as famous as captive as former Prime Minister 𝙏𝙤𝙥, I probably pronounced this wrong. The first name is 𝗨𝗣𝗟, I don't know how to pronounce it. Had to be freed in July 2006 after government prosecutors failed to file charges during his 2-year captivity. In the aftermath of devastating earthquake that had left the Ministry of Justice building in rubble, there seemed to be a more pressing issue to address than the murky world of international adoption, such as tracking down the whereabouts of the criminals who had escaped from Port-au-Prince's National Penitentiary when it collapsed during the quake. Archival documentation for this case will not be released for a long time, but in the incident left the distinct impression that Haitian prosecutors were trying, at least subconsciously, to reassert some semblance of the national authority at time when their country had effectively become a U.S. protectorate. If so, nationalistic bravado at its cost. It provided little comfort to the hundreds of thousands of orphans whom the strapped Haitian government had left to fend for themselves or to rely on foreign-founded orphanage and legal international adoptions. Already greatly complicated by Haitian's government's slowness in delivering requisite permits. Most tragically, it claimed the lives of many Haitian children who maimed during the earthquake, later died on the tarmac of Port-au-Prince airport when foreign pilots refused to fly them to surgical centers in Florida for fear that they too would be charged with kidnapping. Had the U.S. government been an imperialistic edge, how did you say this? 𝗏𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, as its critics claimed, the diplomatic affront could even have incited it to take over the reign of government or pull out of the country altogether, leaving the Haitian government to care for its people on its own at the time of immense distress. The particulars of the case notwithstanding, this seemed to be particularly ill-advised time to pick a fight with Haiti's powerful neighbor. The missionaries were later released before they were ever brought to trial. The January 12th earthquake also underscored a second immutable fact of life in Haiti, that poor governance is a leading cause of the country's troubles, even during the random acts of God like an earthquake, with building codes either non-existent or unenforced. Most structures in Haiti were built of poor quality concrete, characterized by low amounts of cement and few steel reinforcement bars to save on construction materials. Such shabbily built structures barely stand under normal circumstances. 90 children had died 14 months earlier when a school in nearby 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 suddenly, that sounds like French passion, but probably just the way I pronounce it, I don't know, suddenly collapsed on its own. In retrospect, better government regulation would likely have saved thousands of lives. Sturdier structures like the foreboding U.S. embassy were largely unscathed. In fact, that earthquake of identical magnitude near San Francisco killed a mere 63 people in 1989. People normally overlooked past disputes and united in a time of national catastrophe, but it was not long before another feature of Haitian political life, instability, reasserted itself. At issue was the attitude of President Préval, a man already prone to a self-effacing presidential style, who almost wholly disappeared from sight after the earthquake, limiting himself to a dispassionate radio address and a press conference organized by his international backers, during which he stood largely speechless. In the back row, within a month, opposition politicians were openly calling for Préval's registration for lacking leadership skills during a time of national emergency. But these politicians were not very convincing, since their main policy proposal in the aftermath of the earthquake was to propose that their lucrative terms as parliamentarians, which was about to expire, be prolonged by another 18 months on the ground that the country was too dislocated to organize elections. A prolonged political crisis, another of Haiti's old demons likely to paralyze the political class at the time, when the nation needed it most, seemed in the offering. In this context, the collapsed presidential palace served as an apt symbol not only of the massive physical destruction inflicted on Port-au-Prince, but also of the political deficiencies that had ruined the country in the first place. So that's the chapter that's actually only 2 pages. But why does it take me so long to read it? Anyway, I guess we gave a little of the overview of what happened in Haiti's past and the the rooted issue they have in the country. If you guys are interested in knowing more about the history, for me to read more about this book, please comment down below, and I will surely record more video for you guys. I really enjoy reading. I hope you guys enjoy my whispers for these interesting books too. I love you guys so much, and I hope you are relaxed. And I will see you guys very soon. Bye. Such a good wine. Okay, I should probably start.